Okay, so let's picture this. A civilization thriving at the exact same time as the late Roman Empire and the classic Maya. But they're doing it in a place that should be totally impossible to live in, the coastal deserts of ancient Peru. Now, they didn't leave behind a single written word, but they still managed to tell us everything about their lives, their wars, and all their secrets. Today, we're diving into the world of the Moche.
Right. This is the big question. This was the central challenge the Mochi faced. And we're not just talking about surviving here. We're talking about building a complex, super wealthy, and powerful society in one of the toughest environments on the entire planet. The story of how they pulled it off, well, it's an absolute masterclass in human ingenuity.
So let's start with their biggest obstacle, which, kind of ironically, ended up becoming their greatest triumph. We're talking about a landscape that basically works against human life, the stark, dry coast of northern Peru. In a place like this, the number one challenge is the one thing most of us never even think about: water. To put that into perspective, this region gets less than 25 centimeters of rain a year. That's less than Las Vegas. It's this hyper-arid desert just sandwiched between the Pacific Ocean and the massive Andes Mountains. Honestly, on paper, trying to build a civilization here looks like a total fool's errand. But here's the thing. The Moche were no fools. Their solution was just audacious. They looked east to those towering Andes Mountains. They saw the snow melt feeding rivers way off in the distance, and they basically decided, you know what? We're just going to bring the mountain's water to the desert. This incredible network of canals they built wasn't just infrastructure. It was the literal lifeblood of their entire world. And the scale of what they did is just staggering. Get this number: 110 kilometers. That's the length of just one of their canals, the La Cumbre Canal. That's like building a waterway from Manhattan all the way to Philadelphia, by hand, across a desert 2,000 years ago. It is absolutely mind-blowing. And they did it with such incredible skill. I mean, this wasn't just about digging a few ditches in the sand, no way. They engineered these canals with strong stone walls. They lined them with clay so the precious water wouldn't just seep away. And this is the most impressive part. They calculated the perfect gradient, the perfect slope, to keep the water flowing gently over dozens of kilometers, all without any modern tools. So what's the payoff for all this amazing engineering? A feast. A total bounty of food, smack in the middle of a desert. They were growing maize, potatoes, peanuts, even cotton. This created a huge food surplus, and that surplus was the foundation for everything else they built: their cities, their amazing art, their armies, and their powerful ruling class. They had truly, totally mastered their environment. Okay, so once you've figured out how to conquer the desert, you've got the time and resources to develop a rich, complex culture. And lucky for us, the Moche documented pretty much every part of their lives in the most intimate and lasting way you can imagine: clay. This is absolutely the most crucial thing to understand about the Moche. Since they didn't have a writing system, their pottery became their history books, their photo albums, their diaries. It gives us this raw, completely unfiltered look into their world, and it's unlike anything else from the ancient Americas. Just look at these faces. I mean, really look. These aren't generic statues. They are shockingly realistic portraits. You can see the wrinkles, the scars, very specific facial features, even little expressions. Archaeologists are pretty sure these are actual depictions of Moche rulers, warriors, and priests, literally staring back at us through time. It's like flipping through a photo album from 1,500 years ago. But of course, their world wasn't all peaceful. Their pottery also shows us a warrior society that was obsessed with combat and ritual. We see these incredible scenes of warriors in full gear, brutal combat, and captives being stripped naked and sacrificed. Some pots even show priests drinking the blood of their enemies. It's a vivid and honestly pretty grim record of the power that the warrior priest elite held. And then there's this. The Moche were incredibly open about all parts of life, and that includes sex. Their famous erotic pottery shows all kinds of sexual acts with a frankness that's really rare in ancient art. Now, some of it was probably tied to fertility rituals, but a lot of it seems to just be a straightforward, uncensored depiction of human life. It really suggests they saw everything: birth, sex, death, war, as interconnected parts of the world, all worth recording.
So you see these stories on the pottery, these powerful warrior priests, dripping in gold, holding the power of life and death. And you might think it all seems a bit mythological, a little exaggerated maybe. Well, that's what people thought, until one stunning archaeological find proved it was all terrifyingly real.
So in 1987, an archaeologist named Walter Alva made a discovery that completely changed our understanding of the Moche. Near a small village called Sipán, he found the tomb of a Moche ruler, and it was totally intact, untouched by looters for over 1,000 years. This was basically the America version of discovering King Tut's tomb. It was a massive deal. The treasures they found inside were just breathtaking. We're talking hundreds of artifacts, masks made of gold and silver, unbelievably intricate jewelry and nose ornaments, ceremonial weapons. It was stunning proof of the immense wealth and incredible artistic skill of the Moche elite. The people from the pottery, they had literally come to life. But the tomb also revealed a much darker truth. See, the Lord of Sipán wasn't buried alone. He was sent into the afterlife with his wives, a military commander, guards, and servants. And that included one poor man whose feet had been cut off to make sure he could never abandon his post, even in death. It was just grim, undeniable proof of the ritual human sacrifice they'd been showing us on their pottery all along. For almost 700 years, the Moche were the masters of the desert. They built this spectacular civilization from nothing. But then it all fell apart. And in a twist of profound irony, the very forces of nature they had so brilliantly learned to control would, in the end, be their complete undoing. The killer was a climate pattern we still deal with today, El Niño. But what the Moche had to face wasn't your typical bad weather year. Evidence from ice cores tells us they got slammed by a super El Niño, a decades-long storm of catastrophic climate chaos. To them, it must have felt like the end of the world. And here's the crucial part. It was this horrible cascade of disaster. First, starting around 600 AD, they got about 30 years of torrential rain and floods. This mega flood would have just wiped out their irrigation canals, burying their fields in thick mud. Then, immediately after that, came 30 years of extreme drought. It was this devastating 1-2 punch. Their entire system collapsed. Famine, civil war, rebellion against the rulers who couldn't make it rain. It was chaos. And a weakened Moche civilization was then just easily swallowed up by the rising warrior empire.
So after all that, what are we supposed to take away from this incredible story of ingenuity, art, power, and ultimately collapse? What are the lasting legacies of these masters of the desert?
So if you remember anything, remember these 3 things. First, their pottery. They left us their entire history, not in books, but in clay, showing us their faces and their fears. Second, their canals. They were engineers of absolute genius who made the driest desert on Earth bloom. And third, the Lord of Sipán. His tomb showed us that their world of myth and ritual was terrifyingly real, built on both incredible wealth and brutal, brutal power. And that kind of brings us to a final, pretty heavy thought. The Moche were brilliant. They were expert engineers who managed their environment for centuries. But in the end, they were brought down by a long period of extreme weather that was just too big for them to control. Their story, echoing across 1,500 years, really serves as a powerful